My name, the one whispered with faint disappointment at Sterling family gatherings, is Ava Sharma. The name emblazoned, however, on the incorporation documents of Apex Innovations. The name recognized with respect and perhaps a touch of fear in the cutting-edge tech R&D circles I now inhabit. That's also Ava Sharma. The duality has been my shield, my strategy for the past 5 years. To my family, I am the perpetually finding herself daughter, the one who inexplicably walked away from a prestigious physics PhD program at MIT to pursue some vague consulting gig. To the wider world, or at least the parts of it that matter in my industry, I am the somewhat reclusive founder and CEO of one of the fastest growing private technology firms on the East Coast. My family, naturally, remains blissfully unaware of the latter. From my minimalist office overlooking Boston Harbor, the city lights beginning to prick the darkening late December sky, I stared at the offensively ornate invitation lying on my desk. Thick cream cardstock, gold embossed lettering that screamed, "Old money trying too hard." Mr. and Mrs. Richard Sterling request the pleasure of your company at their annual Christmas Eve gala. The irony was almost suffocating. Richard and Isabel Sterling, my parents, titans of Boston's traditional manufacturing scene via the slightly rusting Sterling Corp, were hosting their lavish annual bash. And this year, it held particular significance. They were expecting a key representative from Apex Innovations, the mysterious but crucial tech firm whose partnership via a $100 million joint venture deal represented Sterling Corp's last real hope of staving off financial decline after years of mismanagement and failing to adapt. They had no idea the CEO of Apex Innovations, the final decision maker on that vital contract currently sitting paused on my secure server, was the same daughter they considered a necessary but slightly embarrassing social obligation. My assistant, David Chen, my sharp, efficient COO, and one of the few who knew my full story, buzzed through on the intercom. Mrs. Sharma, the final draft of the Sterling Corp acquisition proposal is ready for your review. And a reminder, your flight to Zurich is scheduled for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you, David, I replied, my gaze still fixed on the invitation. Push the Zurich flight back 24 hours and hold off on transmitting the Sterling proposal until my further instruction. Understood. Will you be attending the Sterling event tonight? David asked, his voice carefully neutral, though I could hear the underlying question. It appears, I sighed, picking up the heavy invitation, that my presence is expected. My relationship with my family had fractured the day I walked away from my PhD program 7 years ago. Physics? My father, Richard Sterling, had bellowed. That's a dead end, Ava. Sterling Corp needs leaders, strategists. Your brother Julian, he understands. He's already managing the Northeast distribution. Julian, my younger brother, armed with an MBA and an excess of unearned confidence, was the heir apparent, the golden boy. Me? I was the academic disappointment, wasting my brilliant mind on theoretical nonsense instead of contributing to the family empire. My mother, Isabel Sterling, was perhaps even more cutting in her disappointment. But darling, she'd said, her voice laced with pity, what will you do? Who will marry a woman who spends her life in dusty labs? Think of your future. Think of the family name. So I left. Not just the PhD program, but their suffocating expectations, their narrow definition of success. I took the small inheritance my grandmother left me, combined it with my own meager savings, and quietly founded Apex Innovations, based on bleeding-edge materials science research I believed could revolutionize energy storage. I worked out of a cramped apartment, lived on ramen and caffeine, poured every waking hour into R&D, coding, seeking out early-stage funding from investors who cared about the technology, not my last name. I deliberately kept Apex low profile, operating through holding companies, letting my brilliant former professor and mentor handle early press. It was partly strategy, partly self-preservation. I didn't need my family's skepticism or worse, their eventual attempts to meddle or take credit once success became undeniable. and success had become undeniable. Apex Innovations was now a leader in advanced battery technology and sustainable energy solutions, courted by major players valued in the billions. All while my family believed I was running a small consulting business, occasionally asking if I needed help making connections. The irony had become my private amusement. Until now, until Apex, under David Chen's careful negotiation lead, keeping my name out of it, became Sterling Corp's potential lifeline. Their traditional manufacturing base was struggling, debt mounting, innovation stagnant. Our proposed joint venture, essentially an Apex acquisition of their relevant R&D and manufacturing facilities, rebranded under our umbrella, was their only path forward. Arthur Sterling, my uncle and a senior board member, had initially been dismissive of Apex during early talks, I knew. But the numbers, the technology, the sheer financial necessity had eventually won them over. They needed this deal badly. They just had no idea they were negotiating with the failed daughter they barely acknowledged. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Caller ID, mother. I braced myself and answered. Ava, darling, Isabel's voice chirped, artificially bright. Just confirming you'll be there tonight? It's so important. Richard has the final meeting with the Apex representative tomorrow morning to sign the big deal. We need to make a perfect impression tonight. I'll be there, Mom, I said evenly. Wonderful. Now wear something appropriate. That lovely navy dress, perhaps? Not those severe black things you favor. And do try to mingle. Smile. Arthur Sterling will be there. Maybe talk to him about, well, about finding a proper position somewhere respectable. I'll keep that in mind, I replied, biting back a retort about already owning a respectable position. Good. And please try not to bring up your consulting projects too much. Keep it light. We don't want the Apex people thinking the family is struggling in any way besides needing their brilliant partnership, of course. She laughed lightly. See you tonight, dear. Click. I stared at the phone. She wanted me to maintain the family facade, pretend everything was perfect, while simultaneously reinforcing my role as the struggling outlier. The layers of hypocrisy were suffocating. For years, I had played along, endured the slights, kept my success a secret to maintain a fragile peace. But tonight felt different. Their dismissal of me, their blatant attempt to exclude me even from the periphery of their crucial business dealing, my business dealing, felt like the final insult. Tonight, I would attend their party. I would wear my simple black dress. I would let them dismiss me, perhaps even try to hide me away near the service entrance. But the carefully maintained facade, the one separating Dr. Ava Sharma, the disappointing daughter, from Ava Sharma, the CEO of Apex Innovations, might just develop a very significant crack before the night was over. I packed my briefcase, not with consulting notes, but with the executive summary of the Sterling Corp acquisition terms, my signature line waiting. The game was on. I arrived at the Sterling family mansion on Beacon Hill precisely at 7:15 p.m., fashionably late enough not to seem eager, early enough to observe. The house blazed with light, casting warm golden rectangles onto the perfectly manicured, snow-dusted lawn. Valets in crisp uniforms efficiently whisked away arriving luxury cars. Through the tall Palladian windows, I could see clusters of Boston's elite. Old money, new money, political figures, mingling, champagne flutes glinting under the massive crystal chandeliers. The air hummed with festive classical music and the low murmur of privileged conversation. It was the Sterling Christmas Eve Gala, the social event I had actively avoided for the past 5 years, the one my mother used as her primary stage for showcasing family unity and social standing. My simple black sheath dress felt like understated armor amidst the sequins and silks. No flashy jewelry, just simple diamond studs. Julian Vance, correction, fiancé. Name is Julian Vance in this version, not related to story number 33. Just simple diamond studs. Julian Vance, using the established powerful fiancé name from story number 34, had given me last year, a quiet symbol of a life my family knew nothing about. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my dress, and walked up the familiar marble steps, bracing myself. Before my hand even reached the heavy, wreath-adorned oak door, it swung open. My mother, Isabel Sterling, stood framed in the doorway, a vision in emerald green silk, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. Her smile, however, was brittle, her eyes sharp with immediate disapproval as they swept over my simple attire. "Oh," she said, her voice tight, making no move to let me pass. "You actually came." It wasn't a welcome, it was an accusation. "Hello, Mom," I replied evenly. "Merry Christmas." "The main party started an hour ago," she continued, glancing pointedly at her diamond-encrusted watch. A recent acquisition I now suspected Apex Innovations indirectly funded via Sterling Corp's precarious line of credit. Richard feels very strongly about punctuality, especially tonight. "I had work," I said simply. "No point explaining the complexities of finalizing server migration before an international launch." She scoffed delicately. "Still tinkering away at that little consulting business? Honestly, Ava, I thought you'd have given up that pipe dream by now and found a respectable position somewhere." Before I could formulate a suitably neutral response, my father's voice boomed from the grand foyer behind her. "Isabel? Who is it? Tell them we're not accepting unannounced guests tonight." Richard Sterling appeared beside my mother, his imposing figure filling the doorway, radiating impatience. His eyes narrowed when he saw me, the same cold, dismissive look he'd given me the day I told him I was leaving my PhD program. "Ava," he said, my name tasting like an unwelcome obligation on his tongue. "I thought we made it clear. This evening is inappropriate for casual visits. It's a crucial night for Sterling Corporation, for the family." "The family, not our family." "I'm still part of this family, Dad," I said quietly, though the words felt hollow even to me. My mother laughed then, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. "Family. Darling, you chose to walk away from everything this family represents the moment you dropped out of MIT to play with computers in your apartment. Do you have any idea who's arriving tonight? The representative from Apex Innovations. The Apex Innovations. This partnership," her voice dropped to an intense whisper, "is set to double Sterling Corp's valuation. It secures Julian's future. It secures our future. We cannot, will not, have you embarrassing us tonight with your unconventional career path and your—" She eyed my dress again with distaste, understated presence. "You look too poor to be here," she added bluntly, the final nail in the coffin of familial pretense. "What would the Bellwethers, correction, use Sterling family names? What would the other guests think?" My father nodded grimly, reinforcing her words. "Know your place, Ava. This isn't the environment for you tonight. Go home. We'll call you after the holidays." To be turned away from my own family home on Christmas Eve because I wasn't wealthy or connected enough in their eyes, because my quiet, multi-billion-dollar success was a secret I'd kept too well. The sting was sharp, familiar, but this time mixed with a chilling amusement at the sheer, unbelievable irony of the situation. They were barring the door to the very person who held the key to their company's survival. "At least let me pop in and say Merry Christmas to Julian," I countered mildly, testing their resolve, knowing my golden boy younger brother would be inside, likely preening near the fireplace, accepting accolades for his instrumental role in the Apex deal negotiations, a role that primarily involved forwarding emails David Chen sent him. "Julian is busy networking with important clients," Richard dismissed curtly. "He doesn't need his dropout sister causing a distraction." Just then, headlights swept across the driveway. A sleek black Bentley Mulsanne pulled silently up to the curb behind my functional sedan. My parents' expressions shifted instantly, hostility replaced by beaming, practiced smiles of welcome. The designated Apex representative had arrived. A chauffeur opened the rear door, and David Chen, my COO, emerged. Tall, impeccably dressed in a dark bespoke suit, exuding quiet confidence, he was the perfect embodiment of the powerful, enigmatic tech firm my parents were so desperate to impress. They rushed down the steps towards him, hands outstretched. "Mr. Chen, welcome, welcome," Richard boomed effusively. So thrilled you could join us on this festive occasion. Richard, Isabel, David greeted them smoothly, shaking their hands. Thank you for the invitation. A magnificent home. His gaze then flickered past them, up the steps, landing on me where I still stood, half in, half out of the doorway. His professional demeanor remained, but I saw the subtle shift in his eyes, the respectful acknowledgement. He offered a distinct, polite nod to me before turning back to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, David continued, his voice calm but carrying clearly in the sudden lull as nearby guests paused to observe the important arrival. I hope I'm not interrupting internal family matters, but before I head inside, I just needed a brief moment to confirm a few minor details regarding tomorrow morning's final signing for the Sterling acquisition with Ms. Sharma. He gestured subtly towards me with his portfolio. To ensure everything is perfectly aligned. The silence that followed was absolute, deafening. My mother's welcoming smile froze, then slowly cracked, confusion clouding her eyes. My father's face drained of color, his jaw slackening as he stared, uncomprehending, from David Chen back to me. Ms. Sharma? Isabel repeated, her voice a bewildered whisper. The signing? What? What does Ava have to do with the Apex signing? David Chen allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible smile, playing his part perfectly. My apologies, he said smoothly, feigning mild surprise at their confusion. I assumed you were aware. Ms. Ava Sharma is Apex Innovations. He let that sink in for a beat. As founder and CEO, her final authorization and signature are naturally required on all binding acquisition documents tomorrow morning. He added, almost as an afterthought. I report directly to her, of course. I watched the dawning horror spread across my parents' faces like spilled ink. The struggling consultant, the dropout, the embarrassment they tried to turn away at the door. Was the CEO of the company holding their financial salvation in its hands? The company whose representative they were just fawning over? It was time to drop the facade completely. I stepped forward, past my frozen parents, onto the top step, meeting David's professional gaze with a small nod of my own. Actually, Dad, Mom, I said, my voice calm, clear, carrying easily in the stunned silence of the foyer, attracting the attention of nearby guests who had stopped mid-conversation. Apex Innovations, LP Holdings, the entire portfolio. It's all mine. Every property acquisition Apex has made on the West Coast, on the East Coast, every development deal, every negotiation Sterling Corp has had with Apex or LP Holdings over the past 5 years. I paused, letting my gaze sweep over their shocked faces. That was all me, directing things from behind the scenes. The implications crashed down on me. The $100 million acquisition deal, the future of Sterling Corporation, their own financial security. All of it rested entirely on the goodwill of the daughter they had just insulted and tried to ban from their Christmas party because she looked too poor. That's impossible, Isabel whispered, her hand flying to her pearl necklace, a familiar nervous habit surfacing. Nothing's impossible, Mom, I replied quietly, echoing her own words back at her. You taught me that, remember? Right before you told me I'd never amount to anything without the Sterling name. From inside the living room, the sound of cheerful Christmas music and clinking glasses suddenly felt jarring, obscene. I could hear Julian's oblivious laughter rising above the din. The party continued, unaware that the foundation of their host's world had just crumbled on the doorstep. David Chen cleared his throat discreetly. Shall we perhaps step inside and discuss the final terms now, Ms. Sharma? He asked, his professional gaze unwavering. Or would you prefer to handle everything formally at tomorrow's signing? My parents just stared at me, speechless, trapped between their desperate need for the deal and the humiliating reality of who held all the power. The daughter they had tried to erase was now, quite literally, their last hope. The irony was exquisite. The reckoning had begun. My parents stood frozen on their own doorstep, staring at me as if I'd materialized from thin air, the festive wreath above their heads suddenly looking absurdly cheerful. Isabel's carefully applied social mask had crumbled, revealing raw shock and dawning panic. Richard's face was a mask of disbelief, his mind clearly struggling to reconcile the dropout consultant daughter with the CEO title David Chen had just so calmly dropped. CEO? Isabel whispered, her hand fluttering to her pearl necklace. But Apex Innovations. That's mine, I finished quietly, stepping past them, over the threshold, into the grand foyer of the house I grew up in but never truly felt welcome. David Chen followed smoothly behind me, his presence a silent reinforcement of my authority. LP Holdings, Apex Innovations. It's all the same entity, ultimately controlled by me. I turned back to face them, letting my gaze linger on their stunned expressions. Why don't we go inside properly? I suggested mildly, gesturing towards the living room from which music and laughter still drifted, oblivious. After all, it is Christmas Eve, and Apex prefers to finalize major partnerships with people we know personally. Ensures alignment, wouldn't you agree? The shift in their demeanor was instantaneous and almost comical. The hostility vanished, replaced by frantic, wide-eyed attempts at cordiality. Of course, Ava. Darling, Isabel stammered, rushing to usher me further inside, suddenly playing the gracious hostess. We were just surprised. Such wonderful news, we had no idea. Clearly, I murmured dryly. Richard seemed unable to speak, just nodded stiffly, his face still pale. As I walked into the main living room, flanked now by David Chen, the atmosphere changed palpably. Conversations stuttered, heads turned. People who had barely glanced my way earlier now stared openly, whispering behind their hands. Word rippled through the room like an electric current. The identity of the Apex CEO, the crucial client, was the Sterling's estranged daughter. I spotted my brother, Julian, holding court near the massive fireplace, champagne flute in hand, regaling a group of his father's business associates with tales of his instrumental role in the Apex negotiations. His fiancée, Bianca, clung possessively to his arm, looking radiant and smug. Julian's easy smile faltered, then froze completely as he saw me approaching, David Chen beside me. His eyes widened in disbelief. Ava, he managed, setting his champagne flute down abruptly. What are you doing here? And with Mr. Chen? Hello, Julian, I said calmly, stopping before him. Just ensuring final alignment before tomorrow's signing. Discussing the Apex partnership, I assume? I paused, letting the implication land. As the CEO of Apex Innovations, I thought perhaps I could clarify any remaining points directly. Julian stared at me, speechless, his face draining of color. Bianca looked between us, confused, then glanced towards my parents, whose strained expressions likely told her everything. CEO? Julian finally choked out. You? Apex? But you're just the dropout sister who wasted her potential? I finished for him, keeping my voice level, though the old hurt echoed faintly. Funny how things turn out, isn't it, little brother? I didn't wait for a reply. I saw Uncle Arthur approaching, his face a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. Olivia Ava, he exclaimed, reaching us. Is this true? Apex Innovations. It's yours? It is, Uncle Arthur, I confirmed. My mother rushed over then, attempting damage control with a brittle, overly bright smile. Isn't it marvelous? Our Ava, so secretive but so successful. We always knew she had it in her. Did you, Mom? I asked quietly, meeting her desperate gaze. Is that why you told me I wasn't welcome tonight? Why Dad said I would embarrass the family? Her smile cracked completely. Several nearby guests coughed awkwardly into their hands. Richard stepped forward, his businessman persona desperately trying to reassert itself. Now, Ava, he began gruffly, let's not air family laundry. This is a private matter. We can discuss the Apex deal. Actually, Dad, I interrupted coolly, this is about the Apex deal. Because everyone in this room with ties to Sterling Corp, I gestured around, should understand the reality of the situation. I turned slightly, addressing the wider group of stunned onlookers. Sterling Corp, as many of you know, is facing significant financial challenges, Debt load is high, recent product lines have underperformed, innovation has stalled. I saw Arthur Sterling flinch. The partnership, or rather acquisition, by Apex Innovations represents the only viable path forward. I let my gaze rest on my parents and brother again. The terms presented by Mr. Chen, I nodded towards David, are based on Apex's thorough due diligence and reflect Sterling Corp's actual current valuation, not its past glories. They are fair, perhaps even generous given the circumstances, and they are non negotiable. I paused. The signing is scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow at Apex headquarters. Failure to execute the agreement will result in Apex withdrawing the offer and pursuing alternative strategies regarding Sterling Corp's outstanding debt, much of which, I added casually, Apex has recently acquired. The implication hung heavy in the air. Bankruptcy, liquidation, complete collapse. Their faces told me they understood perfectly. Please, Richard whispered, his voice hoarse, stripped of its earlier authority. Ava, surely we can come to some family arrangement. The time for family arrangements was years ago, Dad, I said quietly but firmly. When you told me my PhD was a waste, when you dismissed my ideas, when you chose to celebrate Marx Julian's predictable path while ignoring mine, when you shut the door on me tonight. I straightened my simple black dress. Tomorrow is business, 9 a.m. Be there or don't. The choice ultimately is yours. I turned to David Chen. David, I believe we've accomplished what we needed to here tonight. Shall we? He nodded crisply. After you, Ms. Sharma. We walked towards the exit, a path clearing magically before us, as stunned guests stepped aside. I didn't look back at my family, didn't need to see the mixture of horror, resentment, and dawning desperation on their faces. The power dynamic had shifted completely, irrevocably. The invisible daughter now held their entire world in her hands. The signing the next morning at Apex headquarters was brief, tense, and deeply satisfying. Richard, Julian, and Uncle Arthur arrived exactly at 9 a.m., flanked by Sterling Corp's lawyers, looking pale and sleep-deprived. I sat at the head of the polished boardroom table, David Chen beside me, our legal team present. The final acquisition documents were presented. No negotiations attempted. They knew they had no leverage. One by one, they signed, transferring controlling interest of Sterling Corp to Apex Innovations. When it was done, my father lingered, clearing his throat. Ava, he began. Richard, I cut him off politely but firmly, using his first name to underscore the shift from family to business. Future communications regarding Sterling Corp operations, including your transitionary role, implying his leadership was over, should be directed through Mr. Chen's office. My focus remains on Apex's global strategy. I offered a cool, professional nod. Thank you for your cooperation. He swallowed hard, nodded stiffly, and followed the others out. The year that followed saw significant changes. Under Apex leadership and new management, handpicked by me, the viable parts of Sterling Corp were integrated, restructured for efficiency and innovation. The deadwood, including several layers of complacent middle management filled with family friends, was cut. Julian was demoted significantly, placed under a rigorous performance improvement plan, forced to actually learn the operational side of the business he'd always taken for granted. Bianca, his fiancée, quietly disappeared from the scene once the Sterling name lost its financial luster. My parents attempted reconciliation. Gifts arrived at my office, expensive, impersonal things I promptly donated. Voicemails piled up. Tearful apologies from Mom. Awkward overtures from Dad. I didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't something they could buy or demand. Perhaps someday it might be earned, but not yet. Not after decades of dismissal. Instead, I focused on Apex, on the future, and on mentoring. I remembered the sting of being underestimated, the frustration of having good ideas ignored because I didn't fit the expected mold. I made it a priority to find and nurture talent within Apex, regardless of background or pedigree. People like Maya Singh, a brilliant young engineer from a state school whose innovative solar cell design had been initially overlooked by her previous managers. I saw her potential, gave her resources, watched her thrive. That felt like building a real legacy, not one based on inherited names, but on shared vision and mutual respect. One evening, standing at the floor to ceiling window of my office, looking out at the glittering Boston skyline, my phone buzzed. Another text from mom? Dinner next week? Just us? I sighed, deleting it unread. Some doors once closed, are best left that way. My family taught me invaluable lessons, albeit painful ones, about resilience, independence, and the hollowness of superficial success. They showed me exactly who I didn't want to be. My success wasn't revenge, it was simply becoming myself. The woman they never saw, the CEO they never expected, the legacy they couldn't control, and that was more than enough.